So recently I've been dealing with some crazy weather out here in the Midwest, and it made me remember that we are currently right around the corner from hurricane season, and that during this season we witness something that you see every single year, which is panic buying. There's patterns of panic buying that occurs annually around this time, and we can learn from the items that disappear first as to what will be hard to get during any kind of an SHTF style emergency. So let's talk about what items go first at the big box stores and what we need to pay attention to before we find ourselves without the preps that we need. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're going to analyze the patterns of panic buying that occur around hurricane season every single year. And this applies to any natural disaster season that you might face, whether it's wildfires, hurricanes, or where I am right now, it's tornadic activity, which has a little bit of a different flavor to it compared to the other more large-scale natural disasters, but it has the same ideas in the sense of what people think they need during these times of turmoil. And there's definitely a lot of similarities between all types of natural disasters and emergency events when it comes to the panic buying that ensues before and thereafter. So we should analyze what's happening there to make sure we can be better prepared and not lose out on our ability to get the preps that we need and the supplies that we need before they disappear. So if you're trying to make sure you stay ahead of the game and you want to make sure you don't get bought out of all the supplies you might need to take care of you and your family, then hit the subscribe button below so that way we can try to keep each other as best informed as possible. And if there's anything on this list that I missed or something that you think should be added, please leave it in the comments below, because that way more and more people can be better prepared moving forward, okay? Large retailers and grocers start stockpiling their distribution centers months in advance for hurricane season. It's something they do every single year because they expect the panic buying to occur. And even with that knowledge and even with all the pre-planning that occurs around it, they still run out of stock. So this should tell you that in any large scale SHTF style emergency, the same exact situation is going to occur. So we can learn a lot from what happens during these seasons and apply it to anything that could happen in the future, okay? So here's the list of top items that disappear first during an expected hurricane panic buying run at the stores in your locale, okay? So one of the first things to go is bottled water. Now, obviously, people know that non-potable water exists during things like natural disasters, and they want to make sure they can keep drinking and stay hydrated. So bottled water goes very quickly. As preppers, we should be trying to store water and have ways to retrieve water without going to the store just to buy racks of bottled water. But a lot of people feel like that's their only option, and that's what they do in preparation for these events. So if you are worried about having bottled water, or you want to make sure you have gallons of water put away, you might want to get those ahead of time and have them stocked already, because when an event occurs, it goes very fast, okay? Moving on from there is gasoline or even propane or fuels of all kind. Specifically gasoline. You'll see before a major hurricane, the lines at the gas stations are out of control and the shortages occur very quickly and people are not able to get all the gasoline that they need. Now, sometimes there's some merit to it because their idea is that they have to evacuate and they want to make sure they have a full tank of gas and they gotta go. But sometimes people are just buying gas because everybody else is buying gas, and that is something that you'll find a common trend when it comes to panic buying. So gasoline is something you should always keep topped off if possible in your fuel tanks, and have some extra gasoline as well, so when these events occur, you don't have to go wait in line and possibly put yourself in a dangerous situation. Propane is also another thing that goes very fast because people know they can use it to heat themselves if things get cold. They know they can use it to cook, and they know it doesn't require electricity to operate. So because of all those things, a lot of people go out and stockpile propane. Generally, they get the 5-gallon containers that you get at like your grocery store or your local hardware store, and they store them up so they can get that barbecue up and running if need be. But a lot of people also use things like Mr. Heater and stuff like that as well. So all those fuels go very, very fast in any emergency, but especially during hurricane season. And I used to live in Florida. I grew up there. I lived there for the first 20 years of my life. And I will tell you that every year it was a tradition for us to go out and get better prepared. So maybe that's why I'm in the situation I'm in now. Either way, I think it's a good thing for people to be aware of what's happening out there and be prepared for it. So moving on from gasoline and propane or fuel of any kind really is the non-perishable goods. Non-perishables go very quickly. When I say that, what I mean is generally canned goods. Canned foods disappear very fast off the shelves. If you've ever been in a place like Florida during hurricane season, you can go into your grocery store and you know that those soup aisles are very empty, and all the canned goods like tuna and everything else related to that, like Spam, it disappears very fast. So you can expect that to be another thing that disappears quickly during any kind of an SHTF event. And we all saw a lot of that a year ago back in March and April. So it's something that we can apply to any kind of an emergency, and we know it will go quickly. Specifically, according to Walmart, strawberry flavored Pop-Tarts are actually like the #1 non-perishable style food that sells during hurricanes. And the reason behind that is because it doesn't require to be heated, it's immediately able to be eaten, and it tastes good, so it has a comfort value to it. So that's something to consider, because if you're obsessed with Pop-Tarts, like I may or may not have been before going to a rehabilitation center, then you might want to make sure you get enough strawberry Pop-Tarts before you can't get any, because it's really important to some people. Okay, so anyway, batteries is next on the list. Batteries is huge. Everybody just goes out and buys crap loads of batteries. And yeah, it's a good thing to have. You want to make sure you can get your flashlights up and running, your electronic devices can keep going. Whatever you might need batteries for, you want to make sure you have enough to keep that power up and running. However, there's only so much that batteries can do, and as preppers, I think we should all be aware of the fact that rechargeable batteries exist, rechargeable USB devices exist, and we should do what we can to be able to recharge those items more so than just stockpile solid state batteries. Although those solid state batteries do work very well and generally perform better than rechargeables. And if you're into flashlights, you know that's a big deal. But at the end of the day, being able to recharge those batteries or recharge those USB devices might be more important long term than just talking about stockpiling tons and tons of AA batteries or whatever else it is that people go out and do. I will tell you that those disappear very fast, so keep that in mind. If you need batteries for a lot of different gear and equipment that you might have, get it while you can, get it while it's easy to get. Amazon sells batteries all day long in huge quantities, and they're cheap and they're easy to get because they get delivered to your door. Stockpile now so you don't have to worry about the panic buying that's going to go out there and just take everything out. Okay, so moving on from there. Flashlights. Everyone buys flashlights. Do they buy good quality flashlights? No, they don't. They go out and buy a ton of crappy flashlights that'll just do the basic bare minimum job for during an emergency. However, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's smart for people to have flashlights, but you as a prepper should already have high quality flashlights laying around. And I mean, as your EDC, I think you should have a flashlight, carry one with you everywhere. I do, and it comes in handy. In fact, I use my flashlight more than I use my knife, more than I use my multi-tool. I use it all the time. You'd be surprised how often you'll use it if you actually have it. So you should have high quality flashlights already. But having some backups and redundancy of some of the cheaper little, Cobb style LED flashlights is never a bad idea. And that's what goes very fast when you go to the stores right before a hurricane. It's not the $120 Surefires that are flying off the shelves. It's the $1 LED little flashlights that'll fall apart in a day or two. But they'll get the job done in the meantime, okay? So flashlights are quick. Another thing that goes very fast, and now this is not necessarily going to be hugely applicable to prepping and to worrying about other SHTF events, but ice. Ice goes quickly. People want to preserve their foods, their meats, their frozen goods, everything else that's in the refrigerator, and if they get enough ice and stock up their coolers, then they're going to be good to go for at least a few days. So there is some general application to getting all this ice, but as preppers and for long-term SHTF scenarios, it's not something that we're generally going to be concerned about because ice has an extremely short shelf life. But it does go quickly, and if you're worried about having as much beer as humanly possible during a hurricane, which is definitely a trend in Florida, then you need to get more ice. So it will disappear before the storm hits, which means if you want to have ice on hand, maybe just get some ice and throw it in the freezer, okay? So moving on from there, I can tell you beer and alcohol goes very quick. So look, I'm not saying that this is something super important to long-term SHTF survival, and in fact, alcohol could be looked at in a negative way in many ways just because of the fact of what it does to you and your ability to make good judgment calls. But if you need beer, and if you need liquor, and if you need wine, get it before the storm starts showing up. Get it before people start panic buying, because they will buy out all the silver bullets, and you'll have to drink Tecate. So that's up to you. Anyway, moving on from there, okay? Diapers. Baby items in general go very fast before a hurricane. If you have a baby that relies on disposable diapers, please make sure you get what you need ahead of time, including the wipes and everything else related to taking care of a baby, even formula. All that stuff goes fast, and usually this is just what I've seen. A lot of the fights you see break out in stores during these panic buying runs before a hurricane hits are around things like the diaper section, because people are very adamant about being able to take care of their children, and they're not going to let somebody else take their ability away from them to do so. So get what you need ahead of time, and don't fight somebody in the diaper aisle, because that's where the worst fights go down, and I don't want to be part of that, okay? Moving on from there, pet food. Goes fast, obvious why. Get pet food, have pet food, stock up on pet food, then you don't have anything to worry about, okay? That one's boring, let's move on. Generators. Generators go very fast. Now we're talking grocery stores get hit, but so do Home Depots, so do Lowe's, so do Ace Hardware, so do all those other home improvement stores and hardware stores, because they have a lot of the things you need in order to maintain your livelihood during a hurricane and maintain your ability to survive a hurricane. And generators can do a lot of that for you, but they go quickly, and the cheapest ones go first. So if you don't want to have some large output generator that costs, $1,200, and you want to just have something small to run a couple of small powered backup options for yourself and your family during an emergency event, go out and get that cheaper generator now. And yeah, gas powered generators, especially ones that take multiple fuel sources like gas and propane, those are very handy, and they can get you through the initial onslaught of an SHTF event. But if you want to go long term, and you also want to make sure you're not putting out a huge footprint of being a little bit better off than maybe your next door neighbor, solar generators are a great way to go as well. Either way, get generators when they're not being panic bought, so you can get what it is that's appropriate for your situation. They will go fast, and people need to be able to charge their equipment and turn on their TVs and watch the mainstream media because they're brainwashed. So moving on from there, plywood, okay? Plywood goes very quickly too. It might not go as quickly this year because it costs more money than gold, but it does go very fast because people use it to board up and fortify their buildings and their homes, which is something we should definitely pay attention to for SHTF purposes. If you're worried about fortifying your home, and you think the concept of living in a neighborhood is more dangerous because there's so many more people around you, and you're worried about trying to stay inside your home and stay safe for as long as possible during an emergency, well, boarding up windows is one of the best ways to do that, because windows are easy entrance points. They're easy access points for trying to get people out of their homes, aka things like Molotov cocktails and everything else that can just easily get in through a window. Boarding them up gets you on the next tier of being better prepared for any kind of an attack that might happen at your location. And during a hurricane, of course, it's to prevent the glass from coming into your home and hurting you. It's to prevent tree branches from flying in through the windows. It's to prevent a lot of things from coming into your house that you don't want to be there. And the same exact application would be relevant in an SHTF scenario. So plywood is huge, and if you don't have plywood already cut to your windows and stuff like that, if you're in an area where you're actually concerned about the idea of people, maybe like an angry mob showing up at your front door and trying to get in, well, get that now, or maybe not now, maybe a year ago, but I guess now if you have lots and lots of disposable income, do what you can and do what you need to do now if you're worried about a hurricane coming, of course. But lumber is really expensive, so that's a tough one, but plywood does go quickly, okay? Tape as well, for the same reason. People tape up their windows. They try to mitigate the risk of broken glass by doing so. So tape goes very fast, and tape is very useful in any kind of a situation. We all know that. So if you don't have enough tape, get more tape now, okay? Tarps and plastic, same thing. People get tarps, they get plastic sheeting. They want to be able to fix any leaks or any damage to their roof or whatever else they might need a tarp for, and those go quickly as well. And tarps are extremely versatile in any kind of an SHTF event. You want to make a shelter, you want to be able to drag a deer back to your location or whatever it might be, a tarp can be very, very useful. So make sure you get what you need in the sense of tarps and plastic and stuff like that before we find ourselves in these situations. Don't forget, plastic sheeting might almost be a requirement if there's ever an airborne disease of some kind out in the world that is starting to wreak havoc. And being able to seal up your home and seal up your windows and doorways is generally, suggested to be done with plastic sheeting. So that's something that else you might want to take a look at, okay? Now, first aid supplies go quickly as well. First aid is something we should all already have figured out. And if you don't, that's fine, but get first aid supplies now. Don't wait to run out to Walmart, find out that all the first aid stuff is off the shelf except for the worst camping package of first aid supplies you can find, which has 3 Band-Aids in it and a pill for in case you get a boo-boo. So don't do that to yourself. Get high quality first aid supplies now. Get the medicines and the over-the-counter pills that you need in order to get through a situation like that. Things like pain relievers, ibuprofen to reduce fevers, things that you can easily acquire now that might be harder to get before an emergency event. is something you should look into, definitely, okay? Another thing that goes very quick is bleach and cleaners. People are worried about being able to treat water. They're worried about being able to keep things clean after the mess of what a hurricane can bring, and that stuff goes very quickly. So as we saw a year ago, like Clorox wipes disappeared immediately. Those are things we should already be ahead of, but if you're not, this is a good reminder to go out and get the cleaning supplies you might need, okay? Cash. You should have cash on hand. Cash goes very fast. And what I mean by that is people go to the bank, they go to the ATMs, and those ATMs actually run out of cash when there's a hurricane incoming and people are worried about it and starting their panic buying run, okay? The cash goes fast because people know that when the grid goes down, when the power goes out, the only way they're gonna be able to get more gasoline or more food or whatever else it is that they forgot to get is via cash. And if you don't have cash already put aside for these particular situations, you might not be able to get to it before it's gone. And in those scenarios, the cash might last a little bit longer than a few days, maybe even a week or so, but you know, if it's long-term SHTF we're talking, I mean, cash might not do too well past a certain point either, but it's at least a stopgap to try to help you out after the fact if things fall apart very quickly, okay? So cash is important. Have as much of it as you can. I would prefer to have more cash than what I have, but unfortunately, we all are just where we are. So moving on from there, radios. They also go very quickly. Radios are important to be able to keep up on what's happening, and when everything else goes down and TV and internet and nothing else is available, the radios generally still work, and you can get the emergency weather radios that tells you everything that's happening with the storm. You can get your Baofeng ham-style radios, and even if you don't have a license, you can at least listen. You can't transmit, but at least gets you the information you need to kind of keep moving forward and to know what's happening around you. So radios go very quick, which is sensible, it makes sense, but get radios before you can't go out and get them because they're a really basic thing that you should have prepped already, and if you don't, this is a good reminder, okay? Candles. Candles go very quickly. They are a good light source. They have some heating applications as well, but candles are what most people think about when it comes to alternative light sources during a grid down, hurricane, powers out kind of a scenario. So candles are good to have. Always have backup candles. I have candles, and I don't really even plan on using candles as my main light source or more of a redundancy factor in my preps. I actually have, you know, oil lamps, lanterns, stuff like that that I prefer to use during those situations. And if I need to use candles, I can. Sometimes it's nice to have candles because you can light up different rooms in your house, although candles are one of the #1 ways that people burn down their own home. So be careful while utilizing candles, because if they're not managed or looked over, they might burn your house down. And is that worse than not being able to see? And is that worse than what the hurricane did to your home? I don't know. Something for you to consider, but candles go very quickly. I would assume that generally like Yankee candles that are $45 freaking don't necessarily fly off the shelves, but your little tea light style candles and the cheap ones that you can get at the dollar store, those are what go very fast. So get some candles while you can, while it's easy to acquire, because you're not gonna be able to get them in the middle of a hurricane. All right, and the last thing I'm putting on this list so that this video is not 4.5 hours long is paper plates and disposable plateware. People realize very quickly you're not gonna be able to clean plates and clean silverware and clean pots and pans during some kind of an emergency event. And so for a stopgap temporary situation to be able to just continue eating and have, you know, the use of utensils and plateware and bowls and stuff like that, it's just easier to get disposables because then you just throw them away. There's nothing to clean after, and it makes for, you know, easier management of cleaning up messes. So those go very quickly as well. So it's something to keep on hand and to consider, because obviously in an SHTF event, we don't want to have tons and tons of trash, because then that's a good way to give away your location or give away the fact that you have things that are, you know, able to be thrown away, which could be a red flag for some people. But in the sense of a natural disaster, when you're only worried about what might happen like the week after or something like that, it makes sense to just want to deal with things a little bit more easily. So disposable plateware, disposable silverware, and all that stuff surrounding that idea goes very fast. So make sure you have lots of that. Of course, honorable mention, toilet paper and paper towels. Got it, okay. So these are the things that I wanted to bring up to your attention before we hit the season full on. You're going to see the panic buying happen. You're going to. Every single time there's a hurricane, it happens. You would think that these people at some point would have a lot of stuff from the year before, but it never works that way. So they keep going out and getting more and more every single season, and you should just get what you need before there's an actual storm on its way, because then this is when this all happens. And panic buying, as we saw last year, it's not just about not being able to get the things you need. It's not just about having to deal with the crowds and having to fight to find a parking space. honestly, it's dangerous in many ways, and it puts you in a situation that could escalate very quickly based on the anxieties of the people around you. So don't put yourself in that position if you don't need to be. We know now with the propensity of people that are willing to take what they need without worrying about consequence after is higher than it probably ever has been before. And due to the lack of response for what was occurring last year in the sense of people just taking what they want without paying for it, there's a good chance that more and more people are getting accustomed to the idea of just doing that anytime there's some kind of a national event. Because in that scenario, doesn't seem like much is happening to the people who do it. So why would they really take their time to go out and get the cash ahead of time and be able to buy the stuff ahead of time when they know that during an emergency, it's a free-for-all, we can just take what we want. That can be very dangerous, and it's something you don't want to be part of. So just wanted to mention that, wanted to bring all this to your attention. Prepare now while you have time. Don't wait around, and just make it happen. And if you have anything else to add to the list, comment below. Let everybody else know, and let's try to get as many people better prepared as possible. So without anything else to say about what preps go first in an emergency and what we can learn from hurricane season and what supplies we need to get now, that's going to be it for Magic Prep.